Originally an American brand founded in New Britain, Connecticut by Frederick Stanley in around 1843, Stanley Works grew from beginnings in manufacturing hinges and nails, acquiring many a smaller company along the way. Eventually, they took on the many patterns and ideas of Leonard Bailey, most notably the design for an all-metal bodied handplane, moving away from the typical wooden variety. There was a bit of fallout during their time, and Leonard would lose his patents and move on. In the early 1900s, Stanley added the Bailey name alongside their own after Leonard's death. Anyways, as the company grew, they started producing tools in England in the mid-1930s. Now the English-made planes are considered to be inferior in some circles, but my research seems to suggest that both were of a good quality up until a decline in the early 60s. With a lesser following and desirability than the US-made planes, it is harder to get an accurate date on these items. From what I could find around the internet and trawling through forums, this plane could have been made anywhere from the late 40s to the mid-50s. If you happen to be a plane buff and have some insight on this, let me know in the comments below. If you look out for hand planes, especially Stanley's, there are hundreds of models and types. This one is referred to as a Type 4. The types 1 through 8 are this style of plane in different widths and lengths, 1 being the smallest and 8 being the largest. From there on, the numbering convention is not as straightforward. If you want to go down the rabbit's hole, I strongly suggest looking up Patrick's Blood and Gore for a detailed guide on the types. Yes, it's got a fairly strange name. This part is referred to as the frog. It holds most of the components together and is the part that allows for the tuning of the cut. As for why it's called a frog, there is a small opening in the main body called the throat that this part sits behind. So, having a frog in your throat may be where the name came from, or it just looks like a squashed frog. It looks as though this plane has been sitting in water or something acidic long enough to etch the surface. The metal faces I will go through, level and refinish, but I'm not too sure about the state of the japanning. In case you are wondering, japanning is the black asphaltum, also known as gilsonite-based paint that you see on the inner surfaces. It is very hard wearing and good at waterproofing and preventing rust. It is quite hard and can flake away from the edges and surfaces via rough contact. Also, the sole of the body may have a slight curve to it. This should be more apparent when I give it a proper cleanup and sanding. The wear patterns here tell a story. First, you can see that the center seems higher than the rest. This can be an indication that this was used a lot on thinner stock and it has worn down the center. It also seems to have had the toe and heel tapered off to make it easier to use as they won't catch on a surface. A common misconception is that the lever cap should be used to undo this screw. And yeah, you can, but it's not designed for that and could lead to cracking. A tip so you don't remove too much material, keep track of the color of the dust. If you're only seeing silver dust but still have rust on the surface, something isn't flat. In my case, the blade has a slight bend in it. Nothing that can't be fixed with some gentle persuasion. little more gentle persuasion is needed for this screw in the back of the frog. This tool is an impact driver. It takes the downward force of a hammer hitting it and turns it into a slight rotational force, usually enough to release stiff screws which can then be taken out as normal. This leftover remnant from the casting process needs to be removed for proper adjustment later on. The wire brush attachment on the Dremel is good for removing light rust as well as any flaking japanning that may have rust underneath. The Dremel tool has high speed and low torque, which can prevent damage to surfaces like this. The nickel plating on the lever cap was in fairly good condition for a 60-plus-year-old hand tool, and despite going and buying all the parts for replating it, I decided to save it for another project and to just polish this part back up. After a lot of thinking on it, I decided to coat the japanning with a layer of shellac. This should seal any bare steel that is exposed while still leaving some of the character of the original piece. There is some flaky old shellac on the tote and knob, but besides that, they are in good condition. I will remove the old shellac and put more on. These parts have been stained a darker colour from the factory, so I will try and do minimal sanding so I can keep them as close to the original colour as I can. Reassembly is as simple as going in reverse and oiling the surfaces as you go. I could almost make another video on setting up the plane to ensure a good cut, but the process can be quite long if done correctly. You'll see that the blade, the chip breaker, even the body still have some of the natural patina on them. It shouldn't affect the function anyway, and at the end of the day, it gives it a bit more character. And here is the final result. The simple joys in life. Smooth shavings. The blade needs some extra honing, but it's giving a good result already. I hope you enjoyed this little foray into cleaning up an old number 4. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see more. As always, catch you next time.